tighter, this dynamic says it all. You're the curator and I'm your animal. Feel like I'm sinking underwater. Feel like I'm going over the falls. My mind spins faster and faster. My heart is bursting through the wall. And just for once I wish we'd stop and smell the roses instead of dreaming of...
Hello YouTube and welcome back to Kind Heart Homestead. My name is Ben and I'm up here on our off-grid property in the mountains of Virginia. As you can see here, we're in a bit of a unexpected snowstorm, but I just got back to our property right before the snow started with this excavator. With our farm truck here, I barely made it up the mountain, but I was able to get this parked here in a spot where I probably won't be able to get it back out until the snow is done. But I wanted to have a relatively flat area to do all the necessary maintenance before we start this thing up for the first time. My understanding is this did not come with hydraulic fluid or motor oil, so I'm going to have to work on that most likely once I have a warmer day. But you can see here I have a couple augers and a bunch of attachments. I went ahead and downloaded the manual because it didn't come with one. But if you want to stick around later in this video, I'm going to show you how I do the initial setup and try to get this thing running. So stick around and I'll be right back. Once I had a much drier and sunnier day, I decided to strip all of the packaging, which is mainly just the protective wrapping on this excavator. But as you can see, there's also a ratchet strap that holds the front arm to the chassis. And so I just removed that, and then the weight of the arm flung it out down. I need to move some things around just to get some room to service this machine. So I'm moving all of the attachments down underneath our ground mount solar array. All right, everyone. We've had a clear day and it's supposed to rain tomorrow. So I've been spending my chore time trying to cinch everything down, make sure everything's put away so it can stay dry. But one thing I'm hoping to knock out today is the initial oil change on this piece of equipment. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. I have my socket wrenches, a funnel. I even have one of those big, I guess you call it a tote, that you use to drain oil into when you do oil changes. And I'm going to see if I can somehow modify a piece of plastic to act as like a drip tray to divert all of the liquid oil into this oil pan. So let's go ahead and open this up and get started. So I can go ahead and tell you from a few minutes of observing this engine compartment. There's a hinged door, which is kind of annoying. So as you can see, I'm grabbing a bungee cord to hold that out of my way. But even once you move that out of the way, there's not really much room to work down there where the oil goes in and out. I'm going to try to get some close-ups, but let's take a look together. So I got the bottom of a juice container cut off, and then I cut a little notch in it. I'm going to set this under here, and I'm going to try to slip this oil pan underneath. This setup is actually working pretty well. My oil tray fits perfectly in between the scraper blade and the bottom of the chassis. And then that little diverter I built out of the juice container is going to allow the oil to go backwards. Here's a close-up of what I mean. When I say backwards, I just mean in the opposite direction from which the oil flows. So there's a threaded screw in there, essentially just your oil drain plug like you would find on a car, but it's on the side instead of the bottom. And then where the new oil goes in, there's this little orange plug. The whole point of this little tray is to prevent the oil from washing all over this thing. I'm trying to keep the oil off of other
parts just because I'm worried about them getting really sticky and rusty and covered with dirt and grime. So I'm just going to leave this go just for another minute or so, just to get the last bit of the old oil from China out of here. Then I'm going to replace this oil plug and fill it with a funnel through the socket that little orange plug was in. The orange plug actually has a small notch in the side, and that allows you to see oil, assuming the oil is high enough once you unscrew it. So basically, there's no other indicators. I just have to keep adding a bit of oil at a time, look through that little threaded slot, and then eventually replace the orange plug, pull it back out, and see if any oil ends up in that tiny little chamber along the threads. And this is the same type of motor oil I use in our farm truck. It is 5W30. The manual for my mower is very similar to this machine in that you can use different formulas of motor oil depending on the temperature that you're running the machine at. So that brings us to the hydraulic fluid. I had to do a bit of research to figure out exactly where the plug is for the hydraulic fluid. There's a large cap on the top, just under where your feet go. There's a little floor mat there. And it looks like a similar type of cap to be like a gas cap like you'd have on a pickup truck. And there didn't seem to be any way to extract the hydraulic fluid from the top there. I don't have a small transfer utility pump or anything like that. So as you can see here, I'm just making a total mess. I had to create a system of funnels and bottles and all sorts of stuff to try to get this away from there into the oil drain pan that we used for the motor oil. I eventually found a tip on YouTube that showed that once you turn the machine on, you can rotate it so this plug is no longer sitting just above the right track there. And that would have been very helpful, except I was also told not to run the machine till I swap out all of these Chinese fluids. The consensus seems to be is that coming from China, the factories put very low-grade fluids in here, and it might even be vegetable oil. And it seems to be something that you don't want pumped through your machine. So I didn't want to pump it through my machine, so I just had to put up with probably a gallon of this stuff spilling all over the trailer, which isn't the biggest deal. But also under that, we kind of have a stained rock pile now. This is just a gravel lot, and it's pretty far away from our drinking water supply, so hopefully it doesn't affect our health. But once I got that drained, it was just a matter of tightening that plug back. All right, time for the fun part. I'm going to speed this up because it took a very long time. You can see there's a little chrome or stainless steel gas cap there. That's actually for the hydraulic fluid. And it's really hard to get a grip of it because not everything is aligned. They don't have really good tolerances in this like they would in a nicer machine. But I was able to find the correct bit to actually remove the entire threaded assembly that holds that cap on. And you can see here inside of it, there's a filter down there. I successfully drained most of the hydraulic fluid. Even though there's a filter, I'm going to drop a ceramic magnet from Harbor Freight down in there. You can get those for, I think, $2 for $1. It's just a cheap assurance to make sure any welding slag sticks to the bottom. And I think that'll keep the filter cleaner for much longer. Now I'm going to reassemble all that and use a funnel here to get the hydraulic fluid in. And I have to keep lifting this funnel because it's taking forever to drain. I've never dealt with hydraulic fluid before. And I also had to look up which hydraulic fluid to even use because the manual is not very helpful. So I put the floorboard back on, complete with the floor mat. And now I am putting in ethanol-free gasoline, which is pretty expensive. So now it's time to prepare for the first test start of this machine. Now that all of the fluids are replaced, there shouldn't be any gunk passing through the lines. That includes hydraulic fluid, motor oil, and gasoline. So I have to put the wing nuts back in the chair so the chair doesn't flip over. The chair is what sits down over the gas tank, and you have to remove 2 wing nuts to replace the gas. There's also 2 latches for the back panel, which I have secured. I'm just looking around, double checking everything. I'm playing around with the ignition a little bit because I noticed that the port where the key goes in is kind of loose. So I had to tighten that a bit in order to make this a one-handed operation for turning the key. But as you can see here, it's not really turning over. And that's to be expected with a new machine. I mean, it has new fluids. It's probably too cold. What I found out much later is this thing does not actually start in the cold. I read some people will put a small heater in the engine block, and once it's warm, after a couple hours, then it cranks no problem. But what I really have to do is just wait for a sunnier time of day, and then it cranks no problem. But I didn't know that at this time, so I switched from the auto ignition to the pull cord, still with no results. So let's see what happens when I come back after a few more hours of sunlight.
All right, guys, I have a few minutes before Cedar gets home from school, so I'm going to try to take off the stationary thumb and replace it with the hydraulic thumb. I don't know anything about hydraulic lines and stuff, so I'm going to start with just the physical stuff, and then I'll see if I need any adapters or anything to attach the hydraulic lines. If that's the case, I might have to order something. But for now, I just want to get this attached.
I thought this was going to be a straightforward process. From the outside, it looks like all you need is a socket wrench. There's basically just a few large metal pins that hold these components onto the frame, but there's a little safety screw that prevents those big pins from coming out. And those are what I really struggled with. You can see here, I got out a torch. I think I eventually use a mallet, all sorts of things. I'm trying to shrink the metal so it'll loosen up a bit with the torch, and it's not working. So I got out some longer wrenches to get some leverage with a mallet. That still isn't working very well because I don't actually have a good set of metric wrenches. The only set I have is these tiny little 3-inch handle ones, and that was barely enough to get some leverage on this, so I'm definitely not going to tighten it back the same way that the factory did. So I got those 2 pins on top attached, as well as the 1 pin on the bottom. And now that allows the hydraulic thumb to move up and down to close over the end bucket. I don't know if I said that correctly with the proper terminology, but that's essentially what you're emulating, is your hand, the 4 fingers moving up and down like the bucket, and then your thumb being able to wrap around something. So maybe I can toss around some old trees or fence posts or something like that. I think that would come in handy, and that's why I got the thumb. The next part I thought would also be easy is to connect the hydraulic lines, but as you can see, I'm stuck on this coupler. It seems to have a plug in it, and I don't know how to remove it.
All right, guys, it's the next morning, just after sunrise. Starting early because we have a lot to do today, working on the chicken coop and some other things. I just wanted to update you on what I was working on. I ended up giving up last night, and I posted a picture of that hydraulic plug on a mini Chinese excavator Facebook group. And half the people said that it's a permanent plug and that I need to replace the coupling. Other people said that all I have to do is clamp the coupling in a vise and punch something through it, like a screwdriver using a hammer. And I don't have a vise, but I did the next best thing. And I have a short video clip that I'll show you. All right. Got one.
I used a small adjustable crescent wrench as a vise, and I set it on a little pipe as a stand, punched through, and now you can see a close-up of the plug.
It turns out that the hydraulic thumb uses a metric 14 thread, and this machine coupler came with a metric 16. But anyway, at the auction, I bought this big pack of extra hydraulic lines. And I was wondering what was in the bag that came with it. Let me show you that now. Let's get into this utility room. Well, the bag was full of all of these fittings. Most of them are couplers. These are smaller couplers. And sure enough, well, I have to pull these little sleeves off. Metric 16, metric 14. That is perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and pop these on real quick, and then we can test the hydraulic thumb.
I definitely recommend picking up a real set of metric wrenches if you want to do this, because everything seems to be metric. Right now I'm just trying to pop the coupler off just to double check all the threads and replace it with the other one. So I'm pulling the little plastic covers off, and I'm trying to hand tighten first. But as you can see, I'm having some issue on the line coming from the hydraulic thumb. I can get a couple rotations, and then it just sort of pops off. So now I'm going to try to lubricate the gasket. But all of this is starting to suggest that maybe this is not the appropriate fitting for this. I'm going to try it a few more times, but as you can see, once I tension it down, it pops right off again.
All right, this must not be the right size after all. All right, guys, I ordered these new fittings from Walmart. Walmart sells excavators, so they have that stuff in stock. M16 on this end, M14 on this end. Let's see if it fits. All right, the M16, metric 16 millimeters fits. All right, and the M14 fits. All right, now I need to tighten those fittings. Thankfully, the coupler has a hexagonal spot for you to use a little wrench.
And that's important because it allows you to get a good grip just on the coupler, and then you can tighten each hydraulic line or loosen each hydraulic line directly to that coupler. That means if you are removing attachments, you can intentionally remove just the hydraulic line for the attachments from the coupler and leave the coupler in place.
I really need to get a set of metric wrenches. Should be good. I do have a crow's foot torque wrench, but I don't know if I really need to do all that. All right. I'm not too concerned about over tightening because I have such small leverage. I just kind of tightened it up. It's raining right now, but next time it's sunny, I think I should fire this up and see if I can get that hydraulic thumb to work.
So that's it for the setup of this mini excavator. This is about as small of an excavator as you can get. This is a cheap Chinese model, and there's a lot of support groups for these machines on Facebook, and there's plenty of people who do modifications that are a lot more qualified than me to give advice. Feel free to reach out if you want to know what I did, but if you really want to do modifications, I recommend joining one of those groups. You can see here, I ended up putting an auger attachment on it. If you want to see us use that, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And in about a month or two, you'll see a video of me setting up my son's zip line. We didn't have a tree large enough over in this direction, so we had to install a 6x6 post. So that's where this auger came in handy. Anyway, I hope to see you back here next time on Kind Heart Homestead. So, see you later.